2019. Carl, can I get a roll call?
Councilmember Remley.
Here.
Ronayne.
Here.
Lunsman.
Here.
Rife.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bunceness.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Rux.
Here.
Mayor Shoneman.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is passing the minutes from last week's meeting, July 8th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Sounds good. We've got a motion from Clint Rux and a second from Bunceness. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next thing we've got on the agenda is an open forum item with Dr. Jason Grebner. Jason, I'm going to give you the floor here, but first I'd like to thank you for taking the property off the city's hands. As it was said before the meeting, there was one of two for sale, and we're glad that you have one of them.
So what we're asking is to have an address change. Right now we're on a Klein Street address, and we'd like to have a 6th Avenue address. And this is what we have right now, our building, this is 6th Avenue. Our parking lot, we do have an entrance off of Klein Street. Our building does face 6th Avenue. And then we have a staff parking in the back. And then this is what our front of our office looks like right here.
Very nice.
Much nicer than what we had.
Appreciate that.
So I'm guessing that we'll have to approve any address change.
You will. What we did when we address his property, just like we do with all others, state guidelines requests that we address off of the property, the street they're taking the access off of, and that's for 911 reasons. That way, if there's an emergency, fire, police, whichever, they go to the actual address to where they can get in to the parking lot or into the building instead of going into a street that doesn't have any access to it.
So there's no access on 6th Avenue.
That's correct.
And so what is the proposal in this particular case?
Mr. Grebner is requesting his address to be off of Klein Street.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I missed that. Sorry.
Or, excuse me, 6th Avenue.
6th Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will
Okay.
there be an approach from 6th Avenue to your?
No.
No.
So what needs to be done to accommodate this, or is that something that,
That's something the council can approve. But there again, like I say, when we do the addressing, we follow the state guideline for that E911 system. It's all set up on a grid system. So if there have been others who have had this same request, they haven't come to the council, you may see more.
So, okay, but if we approve this, how would whatever authority got a 911 call, whether it's the sheriff's office, police department, how would they? Is there some mechanism to tell them that the real address is such and such Klein Street?
Not that I'm aware of.
So if I could, and the chief can weigh in too, but from a dispatch perspective, dispatch, when they send the notice to either the police or to ambulance, for example, they send an address. And the responder then maps the route based upon that address. There might be additional information that's shared, but for the most part, it's an address. So they map the route based upon that address. For example, Fire Station 1 here, an ambulance call, you would envision that a call to this dental center with a 6th Avenue address would then have the ambulance heading down to 6th Avenue, taking left, and heading towards the 6th Avenue address, only to find that there's no entrance there. Yeah.
Would you please remove
Yeah,
the
I was gonna say,
photo?
are you still gonna have alley access?
Would the alley access
suffice then? To
Yeah,
get
Ellie
into the
doesn't go to
parking
6th
lot if
Avenue.
it wasn't
It
blocked?
doesn't go through.
Yeah, it does.
Vacated, doesn't
Yeah.
go to 6th Avenue, it's vacated.
The alley is on the right side of this photo, which would be the south side, and that's vacated right there, where he was gesturing. That is not an alley that goes through.
Okay, so it's personal property
Yeah.
of the neighbor.
So,
Physically, it goes through.
yeah.
Physically, it goes through, but it's personal property.
So getting back with my scenario, the ambulance driver would be looking for an entrance off of 6th Avenue, would drive right by, because again, he's looking for a building number to correspond with what the address was. Would drive right by, would have to then come around and enter onto the Klein Street entrance. The South Dakota Department of Transportation, I think, is in charge of authorizing a curb cut or an entrance off of 6th Avenue, right, Highway 12? And they have, at this point, indicated that they would not authorize that. So the entrance is going to remain on Klein Street. And that's why the address that Planning and Zoning was assigning is a Klein Street address.
Is there any, knowing that we have our ambulance drivers and fighters and police, they probably know this area. I could see in a larger city where it may be an issue, but is there any impediment from us saying you can't have this address change? Or do we have to follow the standards, or can we say, yeah, we think that it's okay in this circumstance?
I guess I should add as well that typically, when the assignment is made, if there's an objection, it'll be from a business that wants to use a more favorable front street for marketing purposes. Again, the assignment is based upon the dry clinical determination of where's the entrance. And the entrance for this property will be Klein Street. And again, first responders are not necessarily given additional information. They'll just be given an address.
Just for clarification, did they request a 6th Avenue entrance and were denied that? Is
No,
that?
we never requested it.
Okay.
We wanted to keep the Klein Street to
running.
make it easier for patients to get on and off, so they aren't crossing 6th Avenue.
Thank
For
you.
safety reasons.
Yeah.
Probably a
Mayor.
safer thing
I
too
guess
for
I'd be
traffic
curious
slowing
if-
down.
Sorry, I guess I'd be curious, Chief McNeil, do you see this as being an issue from a law enforcement standpoint?
I think there are a lot of places in Aberdeen that are unique on the best approach or best route to take. If we're familiar with this address, from my standpoint, I don't think it's going to be a big issue or a big hurdle. Speaking for the fire department a little bit, a lot of times they'll run their equipment on Washington Street and they'll use their beacon or their ability to use the traffic control light system to stop that, to make it favorable so they can make their route through an intersection. They may not be as inclined to take their equipment through the residential on Klein Street. So I think, it's one more place in Aberdeen that we'll become familiar with. On the parking lot, is there going to be any vision obstruction to the address on your building? So are you going to have the address numbered on your building? I think that's a city ordinance, right? I mean,
We will have that in
Okay.
the building.
all right.
And the one time we did have an ambulance come to our current building, they actually came through our staff parking lot and pulled up to our back door for the ease of entrance. And
Yeah, I think the issue for me is not this particular address, but if this somehow brings other people here, that might not be as easy as this one to decide on. We don't know all the variations that could happen to us, but I think we could very well do this one.
Red, do you have a sense of, are there a number of addresses throughout town that kind of fall into this criteria?
We've had 2 others recently, 3 counting this one.
Sure. And then what was the outcome of those others?
They all took their access and their address off of the side
Entrance.
street.
But they didn't bring it to the council either.
Sure.
they took-
And so they heard the word of the zoning department, or the planning, and kind of left it at that.
Brett, aren't, ours faces the street. Did those other ones face the street? I was thinking they had entrances to different The direction faced a different direction.
And the comical thing about this is all three of them are dental clinics.
Must be a good industry.
Were any of them on 6th Avenue?
No, just this one.
Just this one. I'd like to say, I don't have any problem if we can do this. I do agree with Dave. We don't want to make a habit of just changing them, but the building, it can be seen from 6th Avenue. It's just, the access is just off Klein Street, which I think is better anyway at that corner because it's signalized and it'll keep certain people safe, so.
Mr. Lensman?
On this particular one, we're talking about a whole half block too. You're taking up a big area. We're not looking at, divisions where there might be a problem for emergency services to get in. We're taking up a half a block. I think pretty much anybody here in emergency services is going to know where you're at and how to get there. On this particular one, with such a big area, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You look at comparable properties that aren't the same in the inlet, but going out all the way to the airport, you have addresses that reflect the street that they face, which is 6th Avenue. I think it's sensible to do this. I think it's customer-centric. We're shifting things about a block or so from your existing location. I think law enforcement and first responders will likely have an easy time understanding the move and where you plan to exist. So I think it's sensible.
Sure, any further discussion? I feel like pretty much everyone contributed something.
What will be the street number? Have anybody determined that yet?
We don't know yet.
So what's the next step?
Well, approval from this council, then
So you'll bring
we'll
it
look
back?
at the grid system and find out which address will work.
Yeah, that can't take formal action tonight, but
Right.
come out another week.
So from here, we get a motion to add it to.
Nope, now we can
Okay.
just kind of just leave it and we'll bring it back if administration or somebody can put it on, we can put it on next week.
Thank you.
For the
Yeah,
council to
doctors, thanks for
consider.
coming in. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get this straightened out for you. So the next order of business is old business. We have the assignment of a liaison position to various city boards. I had taken note from our previous conversation, but it was tabled due to the absence of a single council member. So I'm going to run through the list that we've got, and then if anybody has any recommended changes from where we kind of left things, feel free to pipe up. So myself and Dave Bunsness, 911 Communications Center, the Airport Board, Johnson, Bid 1, Dave Bunsness, Bid 2, Mark Remley, CVB, Olson, Library Board, Clint Rux, NECOG, either myself or the city manager, Lynn, haven't discussed that one yet. Parking Board, that one was one that you had expressed interest in, Dave Lunsman, and so I'll put you on that one. Josh Reif will remain on Parks and Rec, and the Regional Railroad Authority is another motion throughout this meeting, so we'll just leave that one be for the time being. Is everyone?
I think
Really?
Mike Olson was CVB.
Mike Olson was CVB.
Yeah, he did.
Right,
He did
yeah.
mention that.
Yep, I had that one. So
Okay.
I'll just
I
run
would
through
be
real
bid
quick.
2, right?
Right, you're bid 2, I'm bid 1.
Yeah.
Yep. Myself and Dave, 911. Johnson Airport, bid 1. Bunsness, bid 2. You, Remley, CVB Olson, Library Rux, NECOG, probably Lynn, Parking Board, Lunsman, Parks and Rec, Reif, and then we'll be discussing the.
I just want to personally thank Dave Lunsman for taking the parking board.
Did you feel like you had a choice?
How bad did you twist his arm?
Not very hard.
It's a challenge.
So I'm gonna.
I will move that list.
Second.
Sounds good. So I've got a motion from Bunsness to approve, a second from Clint Rux. Can I get a roll call on that? Everything roll call with the vote, right?
Yeah.
Roll call on that.
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunsness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. That motion does carry. We'll move on to the routine city business with a consent calendar, possible approval. Interesting, it's summertime when both items on the consent calendar are about parties, I guess. So we've got a consumption of alcoholic beverages at an event and a street party. Can I get a motion to approve those two items?
Move to approve.
Second.
Sounds good. I've got a motion from Remley, a second from Ronayne. Can I get a roll call on that, Carl?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, we've got an ordinance prohibiting parking on a street within 5 feet of a driveway. City Attorney Ron, I will pass that one on to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lynn, can you switch it over so that my screen is up? Thank you. The council was provided a council action request with attachments to it that included an ordinance revision to section 52-223. This was requested earlier by Councilman Remley and the consensus from the council to move forward with this. What I'd like to do is after assuming a motion and second to approve first reading, then I could discuss a little bit of the packet and the items that are included with there for clarification for the public.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from over there. So Ronayne and second from Clinton Rux. So Carl, can I get a roll call on that?
Well, we got discussion.
No,
Yeah.
my bad. So is there further discussion on the matter?
So if I could, I'll just hop in here. The language, of course, of the ordinance itself is fairly simple, just a slight change to subsection E that describes a 5-foot driveway encroachment radius is what it's going to do. It's going to be based off where it intersects with the curb. We didn't know, we understand that some of the driveways will flare out, some have different types of shapes, and we thought the easiest thing for the officers is to just look at where it intersects with the actual curb of the street, or if there is no curb, then the roadway edge line. Councilman Remley asked that we provide a little bit of a drawing, and that's what you're seeing here, to give a sense of where that's at and how that will be demarcated for the officer. I wanted to show just a couple of sample Google aerial photos. If you'll see the red-looking truckish vehicle here, as you see where that is marked here, the rear end of that truck, the other part is shadowing here, but that rear end is probably close within that 5-foot range, probably just outside that 5-foot range. So that vehicle would be fine. The one across the street, as you'll see here, would be within that 5-foot encroachment area. So just as an example, the blue one here would be violating the amended ordinance. This red one here would be fine. There were a couple of others just to continue to show that. Here again is a blue vehicle that would be within the encroachment radius. I should also add for the council's consideration, I did receive an email from a constituent who had looked at this, thought it was a good idea, but also wanted to know if the council would consider expanding this to include an encroachment for alleys, a 5-way radius encroachment for alleys as well. And she identified issues where people park like we see here in this blue vehicle, but they're parked right at the edge of alleys. And it also creates issues. And if the council were to be in favor of something like that, I could certainly put that together. It would be a separate section, not under this particular section. But I did want to show this to the council.
Dave?
I thought alleys were something that we have a visual,
Corner visibility triangle,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
But in the center of the block, we don't for driveways.
okay.
That'd just be where the intersection hits public street.
No, but in the center of the, so say that one more time with alleys in the
So
center
where the alley
block.
intersects a street is where we have that corner visibility triangle.
Right.
But mid alley, we do not have anything for driveways, much like we
So
have.
Oh, mid-alleys.
The constituent's concern was the space behind their home, like on the alleyway?
Was actually coming out with a trailer or camper out of her particular alley and how much difficulty she was having making that turn.
From a parking space
Because,
in the alleyway?
because of vehicles parked like you're seeing here, right next to the alley.
So it's on a public street that they're parking.
Yes.
And they're coming out of the alley, but that's already covered, correct?
No,
I think that they mean like if you
A
back
site.
out of your garage.
The site-
into the
Backing out
alley.
of your garage in the alley.
Yeah.
Is what she's concerned about.
No, if you're
No.
exiting the alley, coming onto the street, there are some vehicles
Then
that
we have
park.
that covered with corner
We got that
visibility
covered
triangle.
with the corner visibility.
Does that apply for parking as well, or is that for obstructions?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I can notify the constituent that that's covered by the site triangle.
Yeah, when you and I
They would-
discussed it, I thought you were talking about mid-block.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right. So anyway,
What provision, I'm sorry, Josh.
How many complaints do we have on this right now? Are we getting? How big of a problem is this?
I had one last winter when the snow was everywhere, and a constituent tried to work with the neighbor that parked right up next to his driveway, and he was unreasonable, and he kept doing it, and finally he just called me and says, "Hey, I'm frustrated, and I would like to see something, an ordinance that would keep this from happening," because he even went to the police. And the police said, well, there's nothing we can do because we don't have any ordinance.
I think from a safety standpoint, though, that 5 feet does give you a little bit extra sight to maybe whether it's a kid riding their bike or even another car, gives you that little bit of time where you can apply the brake before backing out. So, and I've seen this where cars are parked right up to people's driveways, especially more in those older neighborhoods. This would just, I think, give a little bit extra safety that that 5 feet not having parking would just provide a little bit more visibility.
Dave?
I guess that would be my concern is in those neighborhoods that are, pretty tight. Just because we pass this doesn't mean that they're going to have less vehicles to be parking in that area. Is there any thought of, backing this 5 foot down to a different number? I know.
I think this ordinance came from another city.
Actually, we looked at 5 different cities. We looked at Minneapolis, we looked at Fargo, we looked at Rapid City, and we looked at Watertown, and Minneapolis, and Sioux Falls.
And they all have this type of
Minneapolis
language?
twice. They were all different. Some of them had no language on the radius, and others had, I don't think we saw anyone over 5 feet, did we?
we did not.
Somewhere less than 5 feet, to his point. That'd be my concern too, is what is how many parking spaces are we sacrificing in those areas, especially around NSU where there's driveway, and if you've ever tried to park nearby those, you're already kind of slammed for space. I mean, are we gonna have like 8 feet of unused space on between every driveway now?
It's already illegal to park in front of a driveway. So you're losing 5 feet on each side, depending on the difference of driveways, you're losing 10 feet, you're only losing maybe half a space.
Right, but does that jostle the vehicles around so that you can have 2 instead of 3?
Well, as I understand, this will only be on a complaint basis, is that correct? Is when this is mostly talked about, that it's not something the police are gonna go around and just try and enforce, but.
Good
With a
luck.
tape measure.
Revenue
Yeah,
generator.
with a tape
Actually, you have
measure.
some- Oh, Robin.
Just wanted to mention, probably in those neighborhoods where we have the most parking, it's also gonna have the narrowest driveways, so you don't have the swing area. So when you're trying to back out of that driveway, if you don't have that double driveway to swing the front end out, you're gonna have more difficulty the closer those vehicles are parked to that edge of that driveway. So
That's a
those
good point.
neighborhoods create 2 problems for you. One, you don't have enough parking. Number 2, you don't have room for the swing area for the front end of the vehicle.
I'm concerned about 2 situations. One would be football, once Northern opens up their new stadium in the neighborhood parking, and also school pickup. I don't know if you've ever tried to pick up kids from neighborhood schools, but parking is an issue. So if there was a neighbor or someone who lived there who complained every day well, someone else would get a new ticket every single day. And I'm wondering, are we prepared for that as law enforcement? I'm sure your patrolmen probably aren't too excited about that.
You know, kind of as Mr. Emily talked about, a lot of these are based on particular situations. I can't think of ever a high call volume of violations of parking around driveways, but certainly there's some concern, you know, during the school times when children are picked up. I don't foresee that it being an unintended consequence that we're going to have high volumes of calls like this. But I do see sometimes there are challenges like we experienced in the winter that we had where cars are parked right against those driveways and it's very difficult to get in safely to a driveway. So.
Mr. Roney?
And
Yeah,
most
I'm going to support this. I think, I do appreciate the comments about maybe it ought to be 4 feet, maybe it ought to be 3 feet. Are we going to have problems with football? If it turns out that we have created more problems than we solved, we can revisit this and we can fix it later. But I think we should give this a run, and I see that exactly what the chief does. That it is exactly those driveways that are single driveways in the more congested parts of town, and that's where they need the relief.
And I also look at it this way too, is it does sort of help kind of increase the safety. But in looking at this is not like, this is going to be that person who maybe is not parked there for 5 minutes at school when someone's at work anyway. Right. This is going to be someone who, like, they're just parking there all the time. And even after talking to the person, hey, can you not block my view? And the person doesn't do it, this could be a relief to some of those people. So I'm going to support this. And like I say, over in Northern, you know, they deal with it all the time at basketball games and all that. And their main issue is the person parked blocking my driveway, not parked close to it because they're used to it.
Sure, Dave?
I had this experience this last winter, going to someone's house, and it was a single driveway, and the snow was, you know, piled up high, and it's a challenge to get out of those driveways, and I can't imagine so I can imagine what it would be like if that car is parked close to that driveway. So, you know, I'll support what Rob's saying. Let's give it. Let's see what happens, and then we can adjust later.
Sorry, go ahead, Johnson.
Chief, do you have a sense of how many accidents relate to this issue, where people pull out and either scrape an existing parked car, or because of limited vision, pull out and are struck without seeing the moving car that hits them? Is it common?
I definitely see it as a factor. There are a lot of factors. I know that we experienced a lot of hit and run accidents over the winter, and it was based on narrowing of roadways, the way cars were parked, the way people were driving. So it's a kind of a combination of many different factors. But I do think that it gives somebody an opportunity as they're backing out of those smaller driveways we're talking about, an extra opportunity to see a car that's coming down the roadway versus a car that's right up on the driveway, and you have limited vision capability to see what's on the roadway.
Josh, did you have something to add? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, did we get it, the other cities that we looked at, Fargo, Minneapolis, are they all 5 feet, or are they something less than that?
Minneapolis was the only one that had 5 foot. The other ones did say something to the effect of in front of the driveway and impeding the driveway. They didn't have an actual distance on there.
So it's a judgment call.
Yeah.
My only hesitancy here is I don't know how big the problem is. I don't know how many complaints there is. If it's, you know, you have a person, you have a complaint. Is it two people? Are we passing a law?
There's really not going to be a problem if neighbors are reasonable to each other.
Right.
Now, this particular neighbor just did not want to cooperate. And so the guy was frustrated enough to call me and see if we can set up an ordinance to do this. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of problems with it. I really don't. As long as you're reasonable with your neighbor. I mean,
And it's complaint-based.
yeah.
I believe our officers have better things to do than drive around neighborhoods with tape measures and measure driveways. So, but for those people or times when there is an issue, like I say, I see that blue car, and to me, and then there's another car on the other side. How could someone see if someone's doing something? You know, if you give that a little bit, then it's gives that little bit extra room, so.
I'd like to entertain a motion to,
I think we have the motion.
first reading.
Question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'm really not in favor of this. I just think it's going to create more issues than it's going to solve for one person. I just don't think there's been enough complaints in the past to support a new ordinance like this, and so I don't think I'm going to be in favor of this.
Can I ask a question, Mike? Do you have any thoughts on what might help in this particular case?
Well, I think common sense rules. Most folks use good common sense when they attend basketball games or events, and I just don't see it as a regular occurrence to where we have to create an ordinance for that.
This is it is a complaint-based issue. The resident tried to work with the neighbor, and you say common sense rules, right, but there's some people out there that just are unreasonable, and this is to prevent them from being unreasonable and making it difficult for neighbors. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I don't think we're going to have a problem with it down the road. As long as it's there, it's an outlet for someone who hasn't complained like this.
I personally have more of a problem when someone parks directly by my driveway when I'm taking my camper in and out.
Across the street.
Opposite.
So if I complain, is the next ordinance going to be you can't park directly across from a driveway? I mean, that's just that bothers me more than someone next to my driveway.
And I have the same issue when I have a 30-foot camper. Someone parked across the street makes it a little bit more difficult, but someone parked near my driveway makes it impossible. And even that 5 feet would be an impediment, or not, would help that type of situation. But I don't look at this as we're doing this for one person. I think we're doing this because if you look at the winter we had last winter, I know we shouldn't regulate things, but we have examples right here of people who are blocking the vision of someone who may be backing out. And I don't sit there and think about a car. I think about a little kid riding their bike. And as well as a car. I mean, the car is important too, but it really is by giving that 5 feet as you're backing out, because you're backing out slower than you're driving, it really might give an opportunity for someone to do that, to not hit someone. It gives a bigger turning radius, so maybe someone doesn't hit that car and just drive off. Like I said, I think there are added benefits to this that, sure, are we doing this for one person? We've done stuff for one person before because it makes sense, And to me, having 5 feet on each side of the driveway, and we can talk about distance, but 5 feet is something. If it's 3 feet, you just have a yardstick. I'm fine with that. But I think the principle of this is give a little extra room. It's complaint based. It's when everything else fails, and I don't think it's going to affect Northern. I don't think it's going to affect their games or anything, because those people are already used to it, and their main concern is they're parking in front of my driveway, not they're parking close to it because they're used to it.
But if they were to complain, it'd be enforced, correct?
Yeah.
From our perspective, sometimes when we receive a complaint, we can kind of read into maybe this is an opportunity to go over and explain the situation to a person and make them aware of the ordinance. So I know sometimes officers will go and introduce themselves and say, we have an ordinance that prevents you from doing this. Can you please move your vehicle? So I know a lot of times we'll give that person an opportunity to understand that versus giving a ticket right away. It seems to be a little bit easier. I can't say that we're going to do that every time if we can't find a person or they're trying to avoid us, but a lot of times we'll approach people and try to educate them about these things.
Brett, what was your gut reaction? I mean, just in kind of thinking of the space that lives between these driveways, especially north of NSU where they're so close together, are there going to be places where we're turning like adequate spots for 3 into 2 vehicles?
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be some. I mean, you're taking, parking area away, whether it be 3 feet, 5 feet, and it's all going to add up someplace. Is it gonna be a big issue that you're taking away parking stalls? I don't think so, but for some people it might be. I mean, you know, it's kinda hard to tell till it's implemented.
I wonder, according to our schedule of fees, what would be, when enforced, the dollar amount of
I think
citation?
there's another question you have to ask yourself too. In the older parts of town, when you're talking about driveway access, none of those homes have a front driveway. They're
Yeah.
all going into the alley.
Yeah, if you go north of NSU, most of you can drive down whole streets and there's not one driveway on that street.
Grant Street has a lot of driveways.
Grant Street does. There are a few. I mean, there's some probably more to the east and west of NSU around that May Overby area. But when you really get north of NSU, a lot of them take their access off the alley.
So Alan's concerned about the dollars and cents. Do we know, does anybody know what that would cost for a ticket like that?
Well, I'm familiar with the overtime parking, which is a minimal amount of $5 for the first offense. I'm not sure what the parking fine is for a vehicle parked out in the, we'll say in the residential area in violation of something like that. I apologize for that, and I can find out and inform the council next week if you'd like.
Sure, please.
So I need so we've got a motion for the first reading. I'll do a roll call vote on that then. Carl?
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Johnson,
No.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
No.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
No. Motion does carry. We'll move on to the next week. So you'll address the dollar and cent amount in the
I will
meantime?
have that for you next week, yep.
Sounds good. Our next order of business, ordinance regarding snow removal. Ron, I'm going to kick this one to you as well.
Thank you. I do want to put this on as well. The council, again, was provided with the council action request that showed several changes to our ordinances regarding snow removal. And I wanted to be able to provide the council with an explanation of those changes. I don't know if you want me to do that now or after a possible motion for first reading.
So we'll take a motion for the first reading.
Moved. Second.
Motion from Ronayne, a second from Bunceness. Go ahead.
Thank you. Council members, the changes that we're seeing here are for those particular ordinances dealing with snow removal, kind of brought into emphasis because of this particular winter. Helped identify some problem areas that we have and areas that we either have nothing or what we have is not sufficient. First is at section 46-8, which is to make clear that snow removal operations are part of our street maintenance. Just a little add-on, but just to make sure that people understand that. We do get quite a few, especially this year, we had quite a few claims. People were upset because they didn't feel that snow removal is considered street maintenance, and we just wanted to make sure that we consider it street maintenance, and we'll just make it clear by making that change. Section 46-337 has a provision in there dealing with the what are called Zone 1 snow removal operations, and I have that on the screen. It's not a particularly good screen. It's a little darker on what you folks are seeing, but this area in the middle of town that I'm got my cursor going around, that's the Zone 1. That's essentially the downtown business district. What we did was we pulled the requirements for Zone 1, and moved those to another provision. And we'll talk about that in a moment. 46-338 was simply just to make clear in the heading that we're talking about after 48 hours, that you have to have your sidewalk cleared within 48 hours, and we thought, why not make it clear by doing that? And then 46-339 expands the requirement for how snow and ice are removed and or deposited on public property to include not only commercial property but all properties. And so what you'll see at sub A is the language is more important than you think, because the language for sub A requires that you cannot deposit your snow or ice from private property or from a sidewalk that has to be cleared back into the street, alley, or public ground. And however, you may clear the snow and ice from your sidewalk and put it on your own boulevard, but it has to be the boulevard abutting your sidewalk. And we've actually had situations where we have people removing snow from their sidewalk and depositing it either on their neighbor's sidewalk or on their neighbor's boulevard. And so, again, this is one of those situations that's enforced
Common
by
sense.
complaint. And without offending anyone, as a lawyer, I hate the phrase common sense.
Yeah.
Because there isn't any when it comes to stuff like this. You have people being very unreasonable and determining for themselves that common sense is whatever is most convenient for them. So sub A is surprisingly important language. It's in an effort to identify those, to prohibit those people from putting snow on public property and or their neighbor's boulevard. And then sub B is the language we were talking about, zone 1, where we've now pulled that from another section. We've put it on here. And people in zone 1, again, it's the downtown district, they're allowed to put their snow from their sidewalks into the street. The one change here, and we did run this by the Downtown Association, was that they have to do that before the snowplows come through. They can't do it after, and we were having a huge problem with it this past year, where the snowplows would come through. A day later, one of the property owners would throw their snow out into the street. So it didn't do much good. So the change here is that they are allowed to do that. They just have to do it prior to the city's removal of snow from that street. And then the last, at section 48-340 is really a new one where we again saw this last year, people clearing their own areas, clearing a path for themselves through a street that had not been plowed. And I don't know if they unknowingly or knowingly were creating huge issues for their neighbors, and essentially blocking their neighbors from being able to get out of their driveways. So while we will assume good faith and that these citizens were plowing intending to help, they did not help. And bringing their equipment, again, this is one of those situations where we will address a problem if it is a problem. And but we do want an ordinance in place that says you cannot do that. We would rather the default be you don't do it. And then if somebody does it, and it creates the problems we believe we know they create, we can address that at that point. So that's what 48-340 is. So these were motivated and brought into stark emphasis as a result of this last year with all the snow and with all the issues that we were having.
Dave, what have you got?
I like the ordinance, but I would suggest that if this passes, that we send this to all the snow removal companies in the community, because I think they need to understand this, because that's what I see, them moving the snow around to neighbors' places, and maybe they just need to be informed of what the requirements are.
And I agree. I think there's a lot of the problems were created by not necessarily the homeowner, but somebody who's doing things on behalf of a homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difficulty we're going to have, there are probably more people that we don't know that have a front end pickup plow or something of that nature that are hiring out or helping friends or whatever it might be. I think there's going to be a lot of them that will be missed just because we're not aware of who all's doing it. But there's a lot of them out there. And this particular winter showed a lot of creative snow removal just because people were running out of room. And so any open space, it didn't matter whose yard it was. If you saw an open space in somebody else's yard, that became fair game for anybody.
I do know that some of what's in this ordinance will address some of the issues I had and heard complaints I heard this last winter of people again just coming and just pushing, and I saw it one time with my own eyes, a guy taking Bobcat, moving snow from his boulevard and depositing it on his neighbor's boulevard. As well as some of our commercial operators who are just pushing it, instead of taking the time to turn a corner. No, I'm just gonna go push it over in this other area. So like I say, I agree with the stuff that's in this, so.
I can state as a fact that I know that I received at least 10 to 15 calls on neighbor-to-neighbor snow loads this last winter.
Yeah, I think I saw some creative stuff happening. So really, this is putting into words the practice that we're already under, if not just rearranging the ordinance to.
I can't say that's entirely true. We've rearranged it, but we've also put in some new things, and those dealing with the person putting snow on their neighbor's boulevard. These are some new items. The requirement that zone 1 property owners get their snow off before plows.
Yeah.
These are significant.
They've always
important
known that they
changes,
needed
yeah.
to get it off their property. It's just specifying.
And
they
again,
need
the vast majority, you see the most of the time it's the best, but too many times you see the worst here. And the vast majority of the Zone 1 folks were moving it before the plows came
Right.
through. Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge this year was the sheer volume of the number of times. So the snow removal services that were doing this stuff, they had to prioritize who was going to get first service. And a lot of times I think the downtown stuff was left until later. They didn't have maybe the notification by text or whatever for that downtown removal. So we would just get done at 8 o'clock, and by 9:15 we had somebody with a blower throwing stuff back out in the middle of the street on 3rd Avenue or on Main Street, and that is frustrating when our guys have worked all night to clean it up, so.
Carl, can I get a roll call on approving the first reading?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Aye.
Rife, Lunsman,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries. Next order of business is a resolution to vacate the right-of-way for the 16-foot alleyway within Block 27, First Edition, commencing the south side of 4th Avenue. That's the space between 4th and 5th. And from our side, that'll be a Brett thing. What have you got for us here, Brett Bill?
Well, this is located within the 400 block of South Main Street and South Lincoln Street. It's the alley that splits the two. They're requesting to vacate it. It's a 16 by 300 foot public alley. Their intent is to combine the vacated right-of-way with all the adjacent properties and to allow for expansion of their existing parking. Planning Commission approved this on the 18th of June with stipulations that the petitioners must replat all of their adjacent properties to include the newly vacated alley right-of-way. That helps clean up the legal description. A utility easement is established for any utilities located within the alley right-of-way, and an access easement is established for adjacent property owners, tenants, and customers.
Second.
We got a motion from Romaine and a second from Johnson. Can I get a roll call vote on that? You, Carl?
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion does carry. Next order of business is the appointment of the city's representative and commission to the Brown County Regional Railroad Authority. We had talked a little bit about that last week. So on that list, we've got Ronayne and Bunceness would be our representatives. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion from Ronayne, second from Remley. Can I get a roll call vote on
Yeah,
that?
it wasn't me.
Oh, sorry.
I think it might have been Josh.
Right.
Motion from Rife, second from Remley. You guys have similar sounding voices.
We look alike, too.
It's the glasses. Maybe
I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah.
Vision checked a little bit here.
Except all of your hair slid down.
That's right.
Good, good. Carl, can we get a roll call vote on that?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Abstain.
Johnson,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Abstain.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry on that. Next item we've got is the appointment of Heidi Fiedler to the Board of Ethics for, let's see, a 4-year term beginning July 1st. Can I get a motion to appoint Heidi?
Move to second.
Got a motion from Bunceness, second from, is that you, Remley?
No, that wasn't me.
Boy, I gotta start looking over there. You guys are so fast. Second from Lensman. Carl, can I get a roll call on that?
Councilmember Remley.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we've got the recommendation on bids for airport taxiway improvements. Lynn, would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we opened bids on Thursday, June 27th, and the city transportation director, as well as Helms and Associates, is recommending that we reject these bids because there's insufficient funds with what we received to complete the project as originally designed. And after talking to FAA, they're recommending that we modify the specs, which would lower the cost and potentially split the project if necessary. And so at this time, when I'm talking about it exceeded our original estimate, it was by 33%. So it wasn't just, it was like $1.5 million. It wasn't just $500,000. And so we do have to rebid by July 27th. I know that the engineers went out and talked to the two bidders to ask, get some insight on maybe some cost savings areas. In addition to rebid this, they will do it at their cost as far as from the engineering perspective. We will have to pay for publication costs, but it's not as though they're going to double dip on rebidding. And so I'm recommending that we reject a rebid.
Move to reject.
Second.
We got a motion from Bunceness, second from Clint Rux. Can I get a roll call vote on that, Carl?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we've got recommendation for bids on a trench roller. Robin, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
In the past, we have done trench compaction with a variety of what I would call ineffective methods, and we're trying to step that up a bit. We have been renting one of these trench compactors for parts of the last 2 years, just trying to make sure we're doing a better job in these trenches. A lot of times we're having to go back and recompact material and put more asphalt in and recompact, and our soils are a challenge to begin with, and we're really starting out with bad the way we're doing it. So we're trying to make a better effort. We do have 2 crews, so we're asking for the ability to purchase 2 of these, and we have the money in the budget. So.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Bunceness, a second from Ronayne to purchase these, to approve the bids. Can I get a roll call vote, Carl?
Councilmember Remley.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, that motion does carry. Next, we've got payment request from CWF Masonry and Construction for the amount of $50,989. Approval payment for some concrete repair project. Robin, can you tell us about that?
This is the work that we're doing ahead of our patch and seal program. We're pretty much done with it at this point. It's gone pretty well. We started out with a tough spring for them, but they have moved through it. And splitting the projects up like we have, I think, has helped us in many regards. And we're actually well ahead of where we were at last year. And actually, our seal coating, we should be done with almost all the seal coating by the end of the week. So,
Wow.
Move approval. Second.
I've got motion from Johnson, second from Bunceness to approve the payment. Can I get a roll call vote on that, Carl?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries as well. Next item on the agenda is approval to pay the bills on the list provided for July 15th. Can I get a motion to pay the bills?
Move approval.
Second?
Got a motion from Rux and a second from Remley to pay the bills as stated. Carl, can I get a roll call vote on that?
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion carries. Last item on the agenda is approval for additional payroll in the amount of $1,280 for 2 city employees, period beginning June 23rd through July 6th, and their share of Social Security, old age, and survivors insurance, retirement, and health and life insurance. Can I get a motion to pay that payroll item?
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Dave Bunceness and a second from Lunsman to pay those payroll expenses. Carl, can I get a roll call vote on that?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Payroll item is approved. Any other items that anyone would like to throw into the mix here before we adjourn?
Did they start work on Klein Street today?
They have started demolition on Klein Street today, yes. On the north portion.
On the north end, yep.
Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Moved.
Second.
A motion from Munson, second from Johnson. Roll call.
Just all in
Can I get a roll call vote to close this thing down, Carl?
Councilmember Remley.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, we are adjourned.
Good, good, good.